All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. We are here once again with some NFL preseason DFS picks and lineup advice. Saturday, August 26th, the final classic slate of this year's preseason. Sad day. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co founder of Occupy Fantasy, teaming up the all star duo here with our NFL manager, Chris Rooney at RooneyFFB. We've been alternating the videos back and forth. Very rarely have you got both of us on the same video, but we're here today. Chris, what's up?
Brian, I'm really happy to be here with you to close out the classic slate for the preseason. We'll have a video that posts on the channel tomorrow as well for the finale of preseason week 3, the finale of the 2023 preseason, Saints and Texans. But obviously, we have a lot to go through before we let the people go today, before we move on to tomorrow, before we flip the page and look towards week 1, which of course we're excited about. But let's spend some time talking about preseason football tonight. I guess before we go into top plays overall, just because we got less than an hour until lock on the FanDuel side of things with the Jets and the Giants in the Stupid Bowl there, and then the Bengals and the Commanders. Do we have any plays for the FanDuel people out there that we want to talk about before we dive into top plays overall?
Yeah, I'm going to be 100% honest because we're fully about transparency here. I have not looked too much at the FanDuel slate. I know you looked at it a decent amount. The guys that we have listed in our plug as FanDuel only plays for this slate are Chase Brown, running back for Cincinnati. We have the Cincinnati receivers, the iconic Randy Moss, Chris Carter duo of Andre Yashovich and Charlie Jones. And then we have a couple defenses that we're looking at as well. But really, Chris, it looks like a majority of the best plays are on DraftKings today.
Totally agree. We have a lot of Underdog. We're very happy to be doing the best ball streams on behalf of Underdog, sponsoring us this spring and summer. Brian, they've got some stats up for some of the Washington players that seem kind of bad, to be honest with you, for the first couple of games here. I don't think the starters are going to get much run for the Commanders based off of everything we've read from Ron Rivera and the Commander beat reporters. So if ownership on FanDuel is a little high on Jahan Dotson, for example, he's got a pretty high 33 and a half yardage total stat line over there on Underdog. I think he's a pretty good fade tonight overall. I don't think the Commander starters are going to play a ton.
Yeah, agree. And really, what it comes down to it, not trying to take away anything from Underdog against our competitors. It's really tough to get all the information for these slates, and I think it's very easy to just fall into a sense of comfort and look at what happened last week and go off that. When we know in reality that is not what is happening. There are a lot of spots tonight. There were a lot of spots shit on this early slate that we saw, this 1 p.m. slate where people were just jamming ownership from last week. That's not going to be the case. Ownership is going to be in our favor once again tonight. So look towards the underdog lines to see who's going to be popular, but that does not necessarily mean that is who's going to be the best plays tonight. Gamble with Jake in the chat said had a very profitable preseason. Thanks to you guys. I appreciate you. We appreciate you. Thank you for saying that. All right, Chris. Let's start with quarterback for the main slate here on DraftKings. Will Greer, I have locked into this lineup on DraftKings. Talk to me about this situation. Trey Lance was traded there, and as a very nice parting gift before cutting Will Greer tomorrow, they decided to give him the entire game tonight.
Will Greer is going to play 100% of snaps for the Cowboys. So I think for most of us that are playing contests tonight, you're playing small field stuff, small satellite contests, only throwing one or two lineups into maybe the bigger contests on the slate, you should just play Will Greer. We're going to be very direct about that here. Has the best range of outcomes because he's going to be playing a full NFL game. There's really nothing else to consider beyond that. Brian, you are obviously more in the vein of like a 150 max player on these slates. So I'd be curious if you're still going 100% Greer or if you're looking at a couple of the other quarterbacks that we have listed in our daily plug that have playing time upside for more than a half, not quite a full game. Those three guys are Miami's Skylar Thompson because Mike White is still out with a concussion he suffered last week. We've got Aiden O'Connell with the Raiders who should play quite a bit because I don't believe Brian Hoyer has anything to prove there in Las Vegas. And then Stetson Bennett has played 3+ quarters in every game the Rams have played so far. So he's the last quarterback that we have listed as somewhat high risk behind Will Greer. But Brian, I think it's still a locked Will Greer slate, even in your side of the world here. What do you think?
Yeah, this is really not much benefit to getting different at quarterback in preseason DFS. Obviously, in regular season, right? Like a quarterback can put up 30 points. That's not going to happen in the preseason. If you look at, let's just say Greer fails, and him failing and playing the whole game is scoring like 7 or 8 points. Even if one of these other guys double him up and score 16, that's only 8 points you have to make up. Where if you look at the wide receiver position, the running back position, if the chalk fails there and a low owned guy goes off, you're talking about a 20-point difference in most circumstances. Look at just this 1 p.m. slate. Amir Smith-Marset was 2% owned. He put up 20 plus points. And one of the chalk receivers, Austin Watkins, put up 2 points. That's not going to happen at quarterback. We're not going to get a 20-point difference. So you're better off just locking Greer, getting those 8 to 10 points. And if he is the highest scoring quarterback and he scores 15, you get every single possible combination with the highest scoring quarterback. And if he only scores 8, you're still able to win GPP. So, there is some merit to Skylar Thompson, some merit to Aiden O'Connell, some merit to Stetson Bennett. But again, we're also making leaps of faith on those guys, Chris, because we haven't gotten official word on any of those teams. It's really just looking at trends of what they've done so far. So there's a chance that those guys don't play 3 quarters, and then we're really stuck.
Yeah. So just block Greer, move on to running back, wide receiver, which I think is the best place to get different tonight, Brian. We don't have, well, let me actually back up a little bit here. Running back specifically, I think we're a lot different than some of the other content that's available in the industry tonight. I think we're pretty in line with everybody else on top wide receivers. So at running back tonight, why don't you talk me through our number one play that we have ranked here and why you feel he's the best play on the board above where ownership is probably going to be tonight?
Sure, let's go to Las Vegas. And if we just forget what happened in week 1, then he's not a top play, right? A lot of the underdog lines, a lot of other content providers are just assuming what happened last week is going to shake out this week. Sincere McCormick has led the Raiders in snaps both weeks. However, last week they played their starters. They had someone else back. They had 6 running backs playing. That's not going to be the case tonight. We're not going to see Brandon Bolden. We probably will not see Amir Abdullah. We're going to see Zamir White for a little bit. The other 2 guys at the back end of the roster, Damian Williams and Darwin Thompson, they're just as camp bodies, basically. McCormick follows the trends of what Josh McDaniel did last year. And I don't even think he has an underdog prop line. Is that right, Chris?
I think he does have a line. I think
Okay.
I saw 35.5, which puts him in like the middle of the pack, probably like ninth or 10th best play on the FanDuel slate. But obviously that would give us a clear edge on ownership because I think he would profile for most players tonight, Brian, as more of a high risk play. But we think he's running back 1 overall tonight based off of playing time upside at the position. So I feel really good about playing Sincere McCormick. Where ownership is likely to be tonight, some of our fellow companies in the fantasy industry, some of the content you can read seem to be pretty high on Denver's Jaleel McLaughlin. He has the highest rushing plus receiving yardage line for his stat tonight on Underdog as well. And then a pair of running backs from the Miami Dolphins, Brian. I guess there's some scuttlebutt or belief that the Dolphins may play their starters up to a half. So the yardage stat on Raheem Mostert is pretty high at 44.5. And then Savon Ahmed, who played pretty well last week, has the 3rd highest line at 42.5 yards. So that's where some of the ownership is going to be tonight. But I think there's a running back from the Baltimore Ravens that we like better than all 3 of those guys tonight. More of a high risk profile given projected ownership. But talk to me about Keaton Mitchell, Brian. Why are we in on Keaton Mitchell this evening?
Okay, sounds good. So Keaton Mitchell, we were in on him last week. Let's bring him up here on DraftKings. Keaton Mitchell. We expected him to play the most snaps last week. However, he got hurt on a kickoff, and they had to give Dusty Melvin Gordon a bunch of snaps. They had to give Owen Wright a couple of snaps in the game. Mitchell was back practicing this week. He's fighting for a roster spot. They want to see him get the most snaps. Typically, John Harbaugh has given these types of running backs the most snaps in preseason, and Mitchell's been electric when he's touched the ball. No one's going to be playing Keaton Mitchell tonight, so I really like him a lot. We like him a lot. He's our top-ranked high-risk running back. He's going to go overlooked as far as ownership goes. And Chris, as far as the other running backs we mentioned, Miami and Denver, yes, they look good on paper. However, 2 notes I will say. Miami under Mike McDaniel has been known to switch up the rotation in preseason a lot. In fact, despite Mostert and Ahmed having the highest prop lines on Underdog, if you look at the trends, it's actually Chris Brooks that is expected to get the most work tonight. I was pretty impressed with how he looked last week as well. Chris Brooks could get a full half in the back half of this game. So Brooks is a guy that we like a lot as it pivots to those other Miami running backs. And as far as Underdog and other content providers go on Jaleel McLaughlin, they're seemingly forgetting the fact that Tyler Beatty, who missed last week, is going to be back this week. Beatty led in week 1. Beatty, beat reporters are talking about getting him back and getting a lot of snaps this week. So McLaughlin still could score well, but I think Beatty's going to cut into it a lot, Chris. And this just goes with the theme that we've seen all preseason, literally since we've been doing preseason. That when a guys miss a game, the entire field and community forget that they exist, and when they come back, they just act like they do not exist and are not going to play in this game.
Yeah, I think like if you're playing head to heads or low risk double up type contests, it's certainly okay to match your opponents on McLaughlin or some of these Miami guys. We like McCormick. That might be different enough at running back if you include him. And obviously, getting different at pass catcher is going to help you tonight as well, beat your opponents. I do think we've got a pretty good handle on running back situations. The only other one that looks like it'll be popular is Chase Brown, specifically on FanDuel. We mentioned that on top of off the top of the show. And then we've got some of these Rams running backs. They only have 3 available that are going to play tonight. I think you're kind of flipping a 3-sided coin there, if you will, with Evans, Ronnie Rivers, and Royce Freeman. We do like Zach Evans the best. That does seem to be the consensus opinion from everyone else as well. But just before we move on, where's low risk going to be on running back? Those are some of the other plays that the field is considering here as well. Staying on the Rams and transitioning to wide receiver, Brian, we saw veteran free agent acquisitions. Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson both play like 90% of snaps for Sean McVay in week 2. We're expecting pretty much the same thing here in preseason week 3 for the Rams. And they're 2 of our favorite low risk wide receivers on this slate. We've also got a pair of Raider wide receivers in low risk that we like. But are there any other plays at wide receiver that you're on tonight you think the people should be aware of?
Yeah, let's just hit on the Rams for a second. I think they are considered low risk, but McVay has actually switched things up a bit this preseason. Reporters, for whatever reason, normally the reporters are very good for the Rams when it comes to playing time and players who are out. They've been basically non existent this preseason, and that's caused some issues. Like Lance McCutcheon last week only played 5 snaps. Any other preseason, we either A, would have known that, or B, he would have played 90% of the snaps like McVay has done in the past. So I'm not sure these guys are entirely safe. There could be a chance that one or both these guys play 0 snaps tonight. So it's kind of risky just based on what they've been doing. And to that extent, we don't really know how the running back room is going to shake out, but we do know they only have 3 guys. I talk about the receivers, though, there is a question from Jake in the chat. Any Dallas running backs? Dowdle, Chris, looks like they should have the 3 guys that they've been playing. But going back to the point that the field ignores guys coming back, Ronald Jones is expected to make his appearance tonight, his first time for the Cowboys in the preseason. That's going to muddy that running back room up some. Plus, they've historically rested some guys. I will just say that's a situation we have to monitor pre-lock where they could have like 2 or 3 guys active or they could have all 4. And right now, we just don't know.
Yeah, that's the key there. I think they'll only have 2 to 3 that play, but we don't know which one is going to be out, and that's where the risk comes in. We're probably going to learn which out of Vaughn, Dowdle, and Malik Davis there has earned a regular season roster spot because I kind of suspect one of them won't play at all tonight, and that'll give us that information. But as far as building DFS lineups tonight, we're not going to know before lock, and that's the problem. So for me, I think I am off of Dallas running backs, definitely in low risk. I'd be fine mixing them in high risk lineups if you're MMEing tonight, but I think the other running back plays we already talked about earlier are much better plays.
Yeah, and just to that point, if you are playing a bunch of lineups or you're waiting to save some roster spots, Ronald Jones has the out tag on DraftKings. I think he's suspended for the first couple games of the season. He is going to play tonight. And we know that someone like that is going to get 1% ownership. So clip this part of the video later if Ronald Jones goes off tonight. But he is going to play, and he has the out tag, going to be 1%. So, all right, moving back to receiver. You mentioned the Rams guys. Raiders, I feel a little more comfortable just because they're going to have less options on the field. Christian Wilkerson, Trey Tucker, Philip Dorsett. Most of these guys, Keelan Cole, are going to play a ton tonight, as they have been. Trends back this up. The Raiders have been playing to their trends of last year. I think Wilkerson's probably the best option, though, Chris.
100%. I think K Wilk he's one of our core plays tonight alongside Will Greer and Sincere McCormick at running back. So I think you want those guys in the majority of your lineups, definitely the low risk ones. On the high risk side of things, to your point, Brian, the field tends to ignore guys that miss a game and then come back and play the next week. So our number 1 high risk receiver tonight is going to be Sean Ryan from the Baltimore Ravens. Talk to me about Sean Ryan and why we think he has.
Yeah, so Sean Ryan is a guy that if we look back to preseason week 1, 8 targets, I want to say. Let me see here. Yeah, 8 targets, 77 air yards for Sean Ryan in preseason week 1. Missed last week. There was a chance he was going to play. Didn't end up playing. He's back at practice, expected to play. A lot of beat reporters were excited about him. So, Chris, Sean Ryan, a guy that missed last week, therefore he doesn't exist anymore, was extremely impressive in week 1. They're missing a couple guys this week. Treadwell, Shamar Bridges is out as well. So Ryan, full speed ahead. They're going to try to give him as much work as possible in this game. Sean Ryan, we love, is our favorite high-risk receiver.
And sticking with the Ravens, we still expect a pair of tight ends to have the most upside at the position tonight from Baltimore. Both Travis Vokalek and Charlie Kolar played a ton last week. They're going to play a ton again tonight because the Ravens are not playing their starters. Obviously, there's a lot of other wide receiver plays that make sense in high risk, and that's why it's really important that you are subscribed to Occupy Fantasy. You can read the Daily Plug if you're a member and get access to all of our top plays for this slate. But at tight end, Brian, other than these Baltimore guys, is there really anyone else that you think we should be considering playing, or do you just play a Raven tight end if you're only playing a handful of lineups?
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. Davis Allen for the Rams had 8 targets last week, played like 80% of the snaps. If they follow trends, that should happen again as far as playing time goes. So I think you have to like that. Another guy that I think is a nice pivot, this goes back to the Raiders week 1 plans, is Cole Fotheringham, who led the team in air yards in week 1. And they're going to be missing a couple guys tonight. You should be playing a ton of backups, so Cole Fotheringham. But I think as far as low risk, safest options, it's Vokalek, it's Charlie Kolar for the Ravens. 2 questions in the chat, Chris. If you guys have other questions, get them in before we get out of here. Junior says, do you guys correlate any of these wide receivers in preseason in your lineups at all? Chris, I really don't. I just try to play the top plays, maybe pair 1 or 2 with the quarterback if they're playing a full game. But it's really not the correlation fest that we're accustomed to in the regular season.
I will say tonight, if you are playing large field, playing a bunch of lineups, and you are truly galaxy braining this and betting on a quarterback other than Will Greer to be the right one having your lineup tonight, I think you do want to correlate there
Yeah.
because you're betting on efficiency. You probably want Skylar Thompson with one of those receivers like Eric Ezukanma or Cedric Wilson, or Aiden O'Connell with Wilkerson or Trey Tucker, because that's, I think, really the only way Will Greer fails in like the large field contests is that type of duo connects for a couple of touchdowns or something like that. Outside of that, 100% agree with you. I'm just playing Greer, and I'm not worried about having a Dallas wide receiver in my lineup tonight because I just think that's probably the correct way to play tonight.
Yeah, if you did want to play a Dallas guy, we like Jalen Tolbert, we like Jalen Brooks. Those are the 2 guys that stand out the most from a usage perspective. But you're playing Greer just because he's going to get a half of work. I mean, a full game of work. And he's going to be playing with different receivers. So it's harder to correlate, and that's not really why you're playing him. Another question in the chat from Torian. It's more of a galaxy brain question. Do you play Trevor Lawrence as a pivot if he gets a half? Going back to the top of the show, if you guys missed it, it's just not worth it. The most likely outcome is Greer outscores him. In the rare case that Lawrence outscores Greer, it's by just a couple of points, and it's not worth the risk. You want to take your pivots for guys who can outscore the chalk by 20-plus points, and that can only happen at running back, receiver, and tight end. So, Chris, any other guys we haven't talked about that we should discuss before we get out of here?
Man, it's there's a lot of wide receivers that are available. It looks like we've got like 15 to 20 of them ranked on this slate. I will say if we just focus on the most popular plays, Brian, we've got Christian Wilkerson, we've got Trey Tucker from the Raiders. I think we have down as one of the better high risk pivots there from the same team. Philip Dorsett, you probably get lower ownership there on a roster that's pretty thin at wide receiver. That would be pretty good. Keelan Cole, same situation with the Raiders there, Brian. But I mean, yeah, this is obviously the portion of the show where people are looking for us to give them those less than 5% owned super galaxy brain plays that they can throw into their lineups. I do have one that I thought was really strong. So strong that when we were going through our notes Thursday night, Friday night, preparing for this slate, even while grinding the earlier slates, yes, we're preparing for the slates to come throughout the weekend. That's how sick we are. The first play that I wrote down on the top plays tonight was Nate Adkins at tight end for the Denver Broncos. That's going to be my my Galaxy Brain less than 5% owned play tonight. It's gross, dude. It's a tight end. I get it, but this player had 5 targets for the Raiders the Broncos last week in their game, and only Bronco tight end that was targeted by Broncos quarterbacks. I feel like there's a pretty good chance that he has another good showing tonight. So Nate Adkins, my favorite low owned play at tight end.
Love that. Love that. And I'll stick with Sean Ryan. I know we already talked about him. I don't know if he'll be under 5%, but he'll be pretty close. So Sean Ryan's a guy that I'm looking at. If you want one more name, I'll go I'll go Braxton Berrios. We're not going to see
Okay.
Jalen Waddle tonight. And if the Miami starters play a quarter and a half, Berrios has been the number 3 wide receiver there. He'll start and play with Tua. So I'll go Braxton Berrios. There was another question about which quarterback to play. Guys, I know you might have missed it. If you're playing one lineup, you're playing 20 lineups, just play Will Greer. It is not worth the risk to play someone else. We've said this every single slate so far. It hasn't bit us. It's not going to bite us. It just doesn't work that way. Play Will Greer. If Aiden O'Connell scores 16 points and Greer scores 8, that sucks. But guess what? You can still win a GPP when that happens. Really, you want to get a solid amount of points from your quarterback so you can differentiate elsewhere. Double J says no Albert O love. Chris, reporter said this is a make or break game for Albert O as well. But when he's been on the field, he hasn't been targeted in the preseason. So we got him as a high risk play just based on how important this game is for him. But he's been out targeted by Atkins when they've both played.
Yeah, I mean, how big of a night can Alvaro really have if he can't outperform this dude Nate Adkins, who no one has ever heard of? Let's be honest. So I hope Alberto has a good game if you're on him tonight. But Nate Adkins still my flag plant there. This is what's going to be key here over the next hour and a half is staying up to date with anything that we learned from pregame warmups. We're going to have our team looking at all of the reporting we can get for these 8 to 12 teams that are going to be playing in the next 90 minutes here, and we will update anything in the Discord, in our plug document that's available through the website for subscribers. So it's really important that if you're going to be playing preseason DFS tonight and you want to differentiate in large field, you're paying attention to our last minute updates here. We feel pretty good about the top plays that we have here, but if we get just like one running back that we didn't expect being out for a specific team, like that can change a lot of things on a preseason slate. So that's why it's important to be around before lock and see what we have if there's anything that comes out over the next 90 minutes. Other than that, just really appreciate everybody engaging with the content all preseason. It's been super fun for us to be able to cover this. We love talking to all of you. We're all in this special kind of group of sick individuals that care about preseason football. So appreciate all of you for engaging with us. We got one more slate tomorrow night. There's a showdown slate between the Saints and the Houston Texans. So we'll have a video on the YouTube channel for you that'll go live sometime tomorrow morning. And there'll be a daily plug a couple hours before lock as well. But beyond that, Brian, just thank you again for doing a show tonight. Feel pretty good every time I get to talk to you about a slate and top plays. It helps me orient my mind on what I'm thinking about. And I'm sure we'll be mixing it up for a couple of best ball streams as well as we get ready for the NFL season to kick off on September 7th. We are almost there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Chris. And we do have 2 more questions in the chat. Well, one's a comment, one's a question. Jacksonville is supposed to play their guys almost a half. Chris, I would say that is more important for guys like Calvin Ridley, maybe some of the other Jacksonville receivers. I know we have Ridley listed as one of our high-risk plays. He's been targeted a ton when he's been on the field. So more so look for Jacksonville receivers in high-risk contests. And then finally, thoughts on a defense to play. We always get this question. It wouldn't be a stream without the defense. Jaguars are the biggest favorites. Jets are big favorites as well if you're playing on FanDuel. Chris, for high risk, I like to target opposing quarterbacks. And I will say, if Greer is going to be, 60%, 50%, I don't know, probably lower than what we think he's going to be, playing the Raiders defense is especially interesting. And I think most people have this brain block of doing it in the regular season. I like playing Greer and Raiders defense in the same lineup. Ideally, he throws a pick 6 and he's right back out there having to throw again. Really, Greer's floor and fantasy point outcome is not affected by how the defense performs. So I like playing both of them in the same lineup as a Galaxy Brain low-owned pivot.
Yep, I think that's more than okay in the preseason. That there's no secret there. A lot of analysts talk about doing that, playing defenses that have subpar quarterback play against them for 4 quarters. Yes, we have playing time upside for Greer quarterback, but that's upside with the defense as well. If you're looking to go a different direction, we've got a couple of big favorites tonight. The Jaguars should probably be the most popular defense play on the board, favored by about 6 points, most books. 6.5 at some books as well. And then we've got the Jets defense. If you're on FanDuel, they're pretty good. Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders, the other big favorites on this slate. So those are some of the units to consider at defense. You're just kind of flipping coins there and hoping you run into a 2 touchdown game like you did earlier if you played the Cleveland Browns.
Yep. super tilting, but at least they were 6% owned and not 35% owned, which is something we like to see. So thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate you as always. Again, the daily plug is posted at occupyfantasy.com. The link is in the description below. Go read it for notes on every single player on the slate, as well as our rankings and lineup strategies. And make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Get notified when we go live. You'll get notified when that video is posted for tomorrow's Showdown slate, as well as all the content that we have planned for the regular season, multiple videos per week for Showdown and main slate. So subscribing is the best way here on YouTube to not miss it. So for Chris, I'm Brian. Thank you for listening, and good luck tonight.